The rain hadn't stopped since midnight. Seattle was wrapped in that gray, heavy drizzle that made the streets glisten like wet steel. Claire Reynolds gripped the steering wheel with one hand, the other loosely resting on her coffee thermos. Her eyes felt like sandpaper. 2 hours of sleep, maybe 3 if she was generous. Her reflection stared back from the rearview mirror, sharp cheekbones, dark circles, hair pulled back in a quick bun. 32 years old, 10 years on the force, and already looking like someone who carried too much weight for too long. The wipers slid across the windshield with a dull rhythm matching the pounding in her head. Great, she thought. Another day, another dead end. She took the I-90 westbound into downtown, the skyline emerging through the mist like a ghost. The Space Needle stood tall but blurry, swallowed by fog. Traffic crawled, red taillights glowing like tired eyes in the rain. Claire leaned back, letting the seatbelt tug at her shoulder, and exhale. The weapons trafficking case was eating her alive. 6 months of digging, wiretaps, informants, and nothing solid. The captain wanted names, wanted guns off the street, wanted results. And Claire, while she was running out of time and excuses, her radio hissed with the usual morning chatter. Traffic stops, noise complaints, a domestic call up north. Nothing that mattered to her case. She sipped lukewarm coffee and forced her mind to focus, and then it hit the gut feeling, that subtle, unexplainable weight in her chest, the kind she'd learned to trust over the years. Something was coming, something different. She pulled into a drive-thru for another coffee, double shot of espresso this time, and muttered under her breath, "Come on, Reynolds, today's gotta give you something." The freeway was quieter now, the rain still whispering on the asphalt. Claire drummed her fingers on the wheel, already rehearsing the briefing she'd have to fake her way through in 30 minutes. And then she saw it. At first, just a dark shape near the guardrail on the right shoulder. She squinted through the rain. Too big to be trash, too small to be a deer. As she got closer and moved, a dog. Claire frowned. Big one, too, a German shepherd, lying on its side. Mud splattered along its coat. For a second, she considered calling it in to animal control and driving on. She was late. She didn't have time for this. But then the dog lifted its head, those eyes deep brown, clear and alert, locked on her. Not wild, not desperate, just aware. Claire cursed under her breath, checked her mirrors, and eased onto the shoulder. The rain soaked through her jacket as soon as she stepped out. The dog didn't move, didn't growl, just watched her. One leg stretched out awkwardly but not broken. "Hey there, buddy." Her voice softened without her meaning to. "What the hell happened to you?" She crouched, scanning the body for open wounds. No blood, just a limp and some scratches. She noticed the collar, old leather, cracked from wear, and on it, a small metal tag. Not a name, not a phone number, just a symbol, 2 interlocking triangles, carved deep. Claire ran her thumb over it, frowning. Something about it felt familiar, but the thought slipped away like water. She exhaled hard. What the hell am I doing? One last glance at the traffic flying past, then, with a sigh that sounded like defeat, she slid her arms under the dog and lifted. He was heavy, easily 80 pounds, but didn't fight her, just let out a low whine and rested his head against her shoulder like they'd known each other for years. Claire muttered, "Congratulations, Reynolds. You've officially lost your damn mind." Rain hammered the roof of her SUV as she drove toward the department's vet clinic. The dog, silent in the back seat, sat upright, watching the world blur by through the glass. Claire checked the mirror. "You're awfully calm for a stray." He tilted his head, like he understood. Great. Now she was talking to dogs. The vet clinic was quiet at this hour. Dr. Madison, an older woman with gray hair tied back in a ponytail, raised an eyebrow when Claire carried the shepherd in. "Let me guess," Madison said. "You're supposed to be at work." "Yeah, well," Claire shrugged. "He didn't exactly schedule this with me." Madison chuckled and got to work. 15 minutes later, the verdict was in. Minor strain, few scratches, nothing life-threatening, some rest, some meds, and he'd be good as new. Claire crouched by the table, scratching behind his ears. "Lucky day, huh?" The dog's tail thumped softly. He didn't bark once. He didn't flinch when Madison touched him. In fact, he obeyed every simple command Claire threw at him. "Sit. Stay down." Perfect form. "Not your average stray," Madison said, noticing, too. "Yeah." Claire's eyes drifted to the collar again. The leather was worn, but the symbol was clear, 2 interlocking triangles, etched with precision. She pulled out her phone, snapped the picture, and tucked it away for later. She gave the dog a long look. "You need a name." She thought for a second, then smiled faintly. "Max. You look like a Max." The tail thumped again, harder this time, like he approved. Claire stood, arms crossed, watching him. Something was off. A random dog on the highway was one thing. A random trained dog with a cryptic collar was another. Her phone buzzed a text from her captain. Briefing in 10. Where are you? She ignored it, eyes still locked on Max. Who the hell are you? She whispered. And then, a thought crept in, the kind that made her pulse tick faster. That symbol, she'd seen it before. Not in the real world, but in her case files. The weapons trafficking board back at the precinct. Same triangles, same mark. Claire's stomach nodded. This wasn't random, not even close. She looked at Max again. Calm, watchful, too smart for a dog that was supposed to be lost. This dog knows something. She murmured, her voice barely audible over the rain tapping the windows. Or someone wants him back. And that thought changed everything. The next morning, Claire sat at her desk with a laptop open, the photo of the caller on the screen. The two interlocking triangles weren't decorative. She knew that much. She pulled up the encrypted case database, fingers tapping quickly, filters, keywords, cross-references, and then there it was, the same symbol, attached to a classified file on Orion Network, an international arms syndicate. Her stomach tightened. This wasn't just a logo. It was a signature mark, their silent calling card. Claire glanced at the whiteboard in front of her. Photos of seized rifles, coded bank statements, names circled in red. 6 months of work and no clear lead. Until now, her eyes landed on the name she hated most. Victor Kane, primary suspect, ex-military, ex-special forces. Vanished into the underworld 5 years ago. Claire had chased his shadow across half the country, and every time she came up empty. She muttered his name under her breath without thinking. Victor came. Behind her, Max let out a low, sharp bark. Claire spun in her chair. The dog was sitting near the door, ears high, eyes locked on her. He hadn't made a sound all morning, until now. She frowned. What is it? He didn't move, just stared and, like he recognized the name. Claire leaned back slowly. No way. Did the dog belong to Kane, or someone working for him? Or maybe someone on the other side, an undercover asset? Law enforcement. Whoever trained Max wasn't a random pet owner. That much was clear. She reached for her coffee, her mind racing. If Max is connected to Kane, he's not just evidence, he's leverage. The precinct buzzed with chatter, but Max stole the spotlight. The moment Claire walked in with him, officers whistled, joked, threw comments across the room. Damn Reynolds, you're adopting now. Look at that form, bet he passed K-9 school with honors. Claire ignored the banter. She had him checked, scanned for a microchip, nothing. Whoever owned him didn't want him tracked. By the end of the day, her head was pounding. She signed off early, Max trotting at her side like he'd done it his whole life. Night had settled in by the time she hit the streets near her apartment. Light rain again, mist curling under the She walked Max, phone in hand, checking emails. That's when the black SUV rolled up. Slow, windows tinted. The passenger window slid down, and a man leaned out, mid-40s, sharp suit, cold eyes. You Clay Reynolds. His voice was smooth, flat. She froze for half a second. Who's asking? The man smiled faintly and held up a thick envelope. 10,000 cash. For the dog. No questions asked. Claire stared at him. You're kidding. Dead serious. He extended the envelope further. The bills were real, thick stacks, wrapped tight. Claire forced a smirk. Sorry. He's not for sale. The man tilted his head. You should think about it. Could save you a lot of trouble. She felt Max stiffen beside her, muscles tense, his eyes locked on the stranger like a predator. Claire kept her tone calm. Trouble doesn't scare me. The man's smile vanished. He pulled the window back up. The SUV rolled off, tires hissing on wet pavement. Claire memorized the plate. Her gut burned. Why would someone pay that much for a stray? The answer was obvious. Max wasn't a stray. By the time she got home, the city felt different. Not loud, not alive, just heavy, like someone turned the sound down. She walked fast, scanning windows, rooftops, parked cars, paranoid. Maybe, but her instincts never lied. Max felt it too. Every few steps, he stopped, ears pricked, staring down dark alleys. A low growl rolled out of his chest once. Claire tightened the leash. Easy, boy. Inside her apartment, she locked the door, double-checked the windows. Then she called the captain. You sound tense, he said after the second ring. Just a long day. She hesitated, debating whether to mention the SUV. Decided against it. He'd only tell her to drop it. You're too deep in this Kane mess, he warned. Don't lose focus. Copy that. She lied. They hung up. Silence filled the room. Claire turned and froze. Her door, the lock, it was off. Slightly, almost unnoticeable. But she knew she'd locked it. Her pulse spiked. Gun drawn, she swept the apartment, kitchen, bedroom, closets. Nothing, no sign of forced entry, nothing missing, except her eyes shot to the counter. The collar gone. Her stomach dropped like a stone. Whoever broke in didn't want the dog. They wanted the proof. Claire stood in the empty room, heart hammering. Max pressed close to her leg. Still alert, still listening. She whispered, "What the hell did I just step into?" The morning broke under a steel-gray sky, heavy clouds rolling in from the Pacific like a warning. Claire adjusted her grip on the steering wheel, eyes flicking to the rearview mirror. Max sat in the back seat, ears perked, nose twitching as if he sensed something she didn't. The rain came suddenly, thin at first, then heavy, slapping the windshield and sheets. Wipers screeched as they struggled to keep up. Claire drove along a lonely two-lane highway just outside Seattle, heading toward a safe house stashed deep in the Cascades. It was supposed to be a quiet drive. It never was. Her phone buzzed on the dash. She risked a glance, unknown caller, before silencing it. Then, in that split second, the world slammed sideways. Bang! The pickup appeared from nowhere, ramming her rear bumper so hard the steering wheel kicked against her hands. The car fishtailed, tires screaming against slick asphalt. "Damn it," she hissed, fighting the skid, heart pounding. She jammed the gas, trying to straighten the sedan, but the truck was relentless, closing the gap, slamming her again. Max barked, deep and furious, as if answering the threat. Claire glanced back. The truck's grill loomed like the jaws of a shark in the storm. A figure behind the wheel, two more silhouettes in the cab. Not amateurs. The highway curved, but they didn't let up. Rainwater sluiced across the road, making every swerve a gamble. The truck hit her again, harder this time, sending her car fishtailing dangerously close to the guardrail. She floored it. The engine howled. Speedometer climbed 60, 70, 80 miles per hour. Headlights streaked like comets in the downpour. Gunshots cracked through the roar of rain. The rear window exploded in a spray of glass. Claire ducked instinctively, jaw clenched. "They're shooting at us now. Great," she muttered, grabbing for her Glock. She fired a blind shot out the shattered back window, not to hit, just to make them think twice. The truck swerved but kept coming. Another round of shots punched holes in her trunk. Then their move. The pickup surged forward, clipped her bumper at an angle, and with a sickening crunch, her sedan spun out. Tires screamed, metal shrieked. The world turned into a whirl of headlights and storm. She slammed the brakes, but momentum had its own plan. The car careened off the asphalt, plowing into the wet grass and skidding downhill. When the spinning stopped, silence roared in her ears. The sedan tilted in the mud, hood smoking. Max growled low. His body coiled tight like a spring. Claire shook her head clear and reached for a gun. Showtime, above. The truck's headlights cut through the rain as it rolled to a stop on the highway. Doors flew open. Dark figures spilled out, 3 of them. Rifles, slung, faces masked. They weren't here to talk. Claire kicked her door open. Boots sinking into the mud, she ducked behind the sedan, breath ragged. Thunder rumbled overhead as rain soaked her hair and jacket. The men found out. One came straight for her side. Another moved wide left, and the third hung back, watching, waiting. She checked her Glock, half a mag left. Not enough for a war, but enough to make it costly. The first man reached her car, yanking at the door. Claire stayed low. Heartbeat, a drum. Her finger tightened on the trigger. Then chaos exploded. The thug wrenched open the driver's door and barked out. Now, Claire didn't move fast enough for him. He grabbed her arm, and that's when Max moved. The dog launched like a missile, all muscle and fury. His jaws clamped down on the man's forearm with a sickening crunch. The scream cut through the storm as Max dragged him down, teeth locked, shaking savagely. Holy, Claire didn't waste a moment. She spun, fired twice, pop, dropping the second man before he could raise his rifle. The third one cursed and opened fire, bullets chewing through the car frame. Claire dove into the mud, rolled, returned fire. The thug stumbled back as one of her rounds punched into his thigh. The man under Max flailed, kicking, but the dog was a machine, methodical, ruthless. He shifted his grip from the arm to the throat in one terrifying move. It was over in seconds. Claire scrambled to her feet, chest heaving, block slick in a hand. The last thug limped toward the truck, clutching his leg, leaving a smear of red. In the rain, Claire considered finishing it, but then she saw Max. The dog stood over the first man's body, muzzle red eyes blazing like molten steel. Not wild, not panicked, calm, trained. Claire's breath hitched. She'd seen dogs fight before, but this was precision. Every strike, every movement screamed of discipline drilled deep. Max turned to her, tail stiff, ears pricked as if awaiting the next command. Not from instinct, from expectation. You're not just somebody's pet. She whispered. Sirens wailed faint in the distance, too far to matter now. Claire shoved the Glock back into its holster, grabbed Max's collar, and sprinted for the tree line. They disappeared into the woods just as headlights swept the wrecked sedan, whoever these guys worked for. Backup was coming and Claire wasn't sticking around for round two. The rain didn't let up. Branches whipped at her arms as she pushed deeper into the forest, Max gliding beside her like a shadow. Her lungs burned. Mud sucked at her boots, but she didn't stop until the highway was a memory and the only sound was the drum of rain on leaves. Finally, an old logging trail appeared, snaking into darkness, and at the end of it the cabin, sagging but standing. Claire didn't hesitate. She shoved the door open, scanned the room empty except for dust and the stale smell of wood rot. Good enough. She collapsed onto a broken chair, chest heaving, soaked to the bone. Max sat by the door, alert, like a soldier guarding his post. Claire stared at him, heart still hammering. "Okay, Max," she said softly. "What the hell are you?" The power was long dead, but Claire had her laptop and a portable hotspot, one of a dozen tricks in her go bag. She spread everything out on the warped table, laptop, notepad, clock within reach. Max curled on the floor but kept his head up, tracking every sound. Claire pulled the microchip scanner from her kit, standard gear for anyone who dealt with rescues. She coaxed Max closer and ran the wand along his neck. The reader beeped, flashing a string of numbers. Claire typed them in, fingers flying. She tunneled through veterinary registries first, nothing. Then federal law enforcement databases. That's when the walls went up. Access restricted. Classified. Her pulse quickened. She hit it again, rerouting through back doors, only a few in her circle knew. The screen flickered, then spat out a hit. U.S. DEA, Special Task Force K-9 Unit. Status classified. Handler Special Agent Michael Reyes. Status missing in action. Claire sat back, rain drumming on the roof like 1,000 fists. The name burned in her mind. Reyes. She'd seen it before. On her suspect board, months ago. Connected to a botched raid on a cartel weapons cache. The op went to bed. Agents dead. Millions in guns vanished. Reyes vanished too. And now, his dog was sitting in her cabin, staring at her with eyes that held secrets of their own. Claire swallowed hard. "Max, what did they do to you out there?" The dog didn't move, didn't blink, just kept that unyielding gaze, like he knew the question she wasn't asking. She pulled up every shred of intel she had on the raid. 6 months ago, Eastern Washington, Task Force Delta hit a cartel stronghold expecting resistance, but not the bloodbath that followed. Someone leaked the op, someone inside. If Reyes was dirty, this dog might be her only witness. But if Reyes wasn't, then whoever wanted him gone would want Max gone too. Claire looked at the map spread on the table. Safe houses, dead drops, cartel routes. The threads tangled. And now Max was the knot at the center. She rubbed her temple, mind spinning. "Okay," she murmured. "New plan. We find Reyes, or his body, and then we burn the whole damn web down." Thunder cracked like artillery outside. Claire didn't flinch. She reached down, scratched Max behind the ears. His muscles stayed tense, but he leaned into her touch for a fraction of a second. A flicker of trust, that was enough. She powered down the laptop, checked her clock, and stood. "Get some rest, soldier," she said softly. "Tomorrow, we hunt ghosts." The storm raged on, but inside the cabin, something colder settled over. Claire, resolve forged in steel and fire, because now, it wasn't just a case, it was a war. Leah leaned over the evidence board in her apartment, her fingers tracing the red string lines connecting names, dates, and places. It all pointed to one name, like a spider at the center of a dark web: Victor Kane. For weeks, she had suspected Kane was more than just a wealthy businessman with political ambitions. Now, everything screamed organized crime and a reach that extended deep into law enforcement. But there was one piece she couldn't fit. Max. Why was a military working dog, the last survivor of a Black Ops unit, now running for his life on her watch? She took a breath and replayed the handler's dying words in her head. "They'll come for him. Don't trust anyone." The handler's death hadn't been random. He knew something worth killing for. And Max. Max wasn't just a witness. He was the key. Claire clicked through the classified file she'd decrypted from the handler's phone. It confirmed what she feared. Max's unit had been investigating Kane months ago. Covert surveillance, evidence, gathering. Then the whole unit went dark, all except Max. Claire crouched down, meeting Max's sharp amber eyes. "You've been carrying the truth this whole time, haven't you?" Max's ears flicked. He didn't answer, obviously, but the look in his eyes was almost human. The file hinted at one last light location outside Tacoma, a warehouse listed under one of Kane's shell companies. Claire grabbed her gun badge and jacket. "Come on, partner," she said, voice low but steady. "Time to finish what they started." Max's tail thumped once against the floor. The game had changed. The warehouse loomed on the edge of Tacoma's industrial district, dark and silent under the sodium streetlights. Its corrugated steel walls were tagged with faded graffiti, and a chain-link fence wrapped around it like a rusted cage. Claire parked a block away and killed the engine. She scanned the perimeter through her binoculars. No movement, no guards, too quiet. "Either we're early," she muttered, "or this is a trap." Max sat in the passenger seat, tense eyes fixed on the building. He gave a low growl that rumbled like distant thunder. They slipped through a gap in the fence and hugged the shadows along the loading dock. Claire's clock was steady in her hands as she pried open a side door. The metal groaned, but no alarm blared inside. The air was thick with dust and motor. Oil crates stacked floor to ceiling cast long skeletal shadows. Claire swept her flashlight across the room and froze. A faint hum, coming from deeper inside. Max patted ahead, nose twitching. Then he stopped at a wall of crates and barked once. Sharp and urgent. Claire moved closer. Behind the crates was a door barely visible. She pushed it open and stepped into a cramped room lit by the cold glow of server LEDs. A rack of encrypted drives blinked like tiny eyes. "Bingo," she whispered. Claire pulled out her phone and started photographing everything. Then she grabbed 2 drives, shoving them into her jacket. That's when the night exploded in white light. Headlights flooded the room from the loading dock. Tires screeched, engines roared. Claire cursed, when not alone. Boots pounded on concrete. Shadows danced as men poured in armed, fast, efficient. The first shot shattered the silence. Claire dove behind a crate, bullets sparking off metal inches from her head. Max lunged low, knocking a gunman off his feet with brutal force. The man screamed as Max clamped down on his wrist. Claire popped up and fired 1 shot, 2 dropping another attacker. But more kept coming. Adrenaline surged like fire in her veins. She grabbed Max's collar, yanking him toward the exit. "Move!" They sprinted through the hail of gunfire, weaving between crates. Claire felt the heat of a bullet whip past her ear. She didn't look back. The night air hit her like a punch as they burst outside. She fired at the headlights of a black SUV, shattering glass, forcing the driver to slam the brakes. Max leapt into the passenger seat of Claire's car before she even opened the door. She gunned the engine, tires screaming as they tore out of the lot with a convoy of SUVs giving chase. Claire's pulse hammered in her throat. Whoever these men were, they weren't hired thugs. They moved like pros, military, and they wanted Max alive. They lost the tail on a back road, ditching the car 2 miles from downtown. Claire and Max slipped through alleys under the cover of rain, finally making it back to the precinct near midnight. Her hands shook as she logged into the secure system, shoving the drives into ARIA. Code scrolled across the screen as the upload began. This was it. Proof. Enough to bring Kane down. She lived long enough to finish. The progress bar crawled past 20% when the door creaked, burning the midnight oil. Claire spun around, heart in her throat. Captain Harris stood in the doorway, rain dripping from his coat. His face was calm. "To calm, Cap," she said carefully, her hand inching toward her gun. "What are you doing here?" He smiled, a cold reptilian curve of the lips. "You've been busy, Claire, digging where you shouldn't." Her stomach sank. "No, please, God, no." "You're working for him," she said. "Working with him," Harris corrected, stepping inside, shutting the door behind him. The metallic click of the lock sounded like a death knell. "You don't understand, Claire. Kane isn't the enemy. He's the future. This country, they need strong hands to guide them." He drew his gun slowly, almost lazily, as if they had all the time in the world. "Now," he said, voice soft as silk, "hand me the dog, and the drives. Walk away, Rich, or don't walk away at all." Claire felt Max stiffen beside her. His growl was low, primal, vibrating through the floor. "You really think I'd sell out everything for a paycheck?" Claire's voice was steel, but her pulse was a war drum, not a paycheck. Harris said, "A life without fear, a life where you're not outgunned and outnumbered every damn day. You deserve that." The upload ticked to 60%. Last chance. Detective Claire's finger curled on the trigger. Her eyes met Max's. He didn't need words. The room crackled with tension. Rain hammered against the windows. "Guess I'm old-fashioned," Claire said. And then everything happened at once. Harris lunged. Claire fired. The shot cracked like thunder just as Max launched himself forward. A streak of muscle and fury. The fight for the truth had only begun. The Seattle waterfront was a cathedral of steel and shadows that night. The sky hung low, black and swollen with rain, while the Pacific wind cut through the alleys between shipping containers like a blade. Floodlights glared from towers above the docks, carving long, trembling silhouettes across the slick pavement. Claire checked her watch. Turning 3:57, 3 minutes to midnight. From where she crouched behind a stack of containers, she could hear the distant groan of a crane lifting another 20-ton box. The entire dockyard moved like a living machine, steel cables whining, forklifts humming, radios crackling in clipped tones. Somewhere in that labyrinth of containers, Kane's shipment was arriving, and with it, the last piece of evidence she needed to burn him down. She reached for the earpiece, but this time, there was only silence. No backup, no command team whispering tactics. This wasn't an operation. This was a war she'd declared on Kane the moment he murdered her partner, and she didn't come alone. At her heel, Max waited silent as death, fur slick with rain, eyes locked on hers. His ribs were still bandaged from the ambush days ago, but he hadn't hesitated when she opened the passenger door of her car earlier tonight. He knew. Dogs always know. Just you and me, Claire whispered, resting a hand on his head. His ears twitched at the sound of voices ahead. Kane's men were here, dozens of them. Shadows moved between container stacks, black jackets, assault rifles glinting under the lights. A semi-truck rumbled closer, air brakes hissing as it backed toward a loading crane. The shipment. Claire's pulse spiked. She scanned for Kane. If he was smart, he'd stay off the ground. Let his soldiers do the dirty work. But Kane wasn't smart, he was proud. And pride makes men predictable. The crane operator lowered a container onto a flatbed. Chains clanked. The men swarmed to unlock it. Claire tightened her grip on the suppressed cig at her hip. Every muscle in her body screamed for the kill shot, but she forced herself to wait. One chance, one clean shot at Kane. Thunder rumbled overhead. The first sheets of rain came down, hissing, against steel. The storm had arrived. "Ready, boy," she murmured. Max's only answer was a low growl. Claire moved. They ghosted through the shadows, weaving between the rows of containers as rain blurred the world into silver and black. Voices rose, shouts, laughter, the dull thud of boots on metal stairs. She slipped closer, heart pounding, until she had a clear line of sight, and there he was, Kane, standing at the edge of the loading zone, black leather coat, silver hair slicked back like a blade. Even from here, she could see the scar cutting down his jaw. He was barking orders, waving men toward the container. Claire steadied her breath, lined up the shot. Her finger curled. Move. The shout came from behind her. A god. How the hell? She spun, dropped him with a double tap, but the damage was done. Alarms erupted short, sharp whistles, men scattered, grabbing rifles, floodlights blazed to life, slicing through the rain. The night exploded. Gunfire tore across the dock, bullets sparked against steel, whining past Claire's head. She dove behind a container, dragging Max with her. The air filled with the stink of cordite and the roar of engines. Trucks screeched into position, men leaping into firing stances. Claire slammed a fresh mag into her pistol and keyed her mic. Static. Dead channel. No backup. Just like she planned. "All right, Max," she whispered, adrenaline flooding her veins. "Let's finish this." They broke cover. Claire fired in controlled bursts, dropping 1, 2, 3 men before they could pin her down. Max launched like a black missile, hitting a gunman square in the chest and ripping the rifle from his hands. Screams cut through the storm. Claire rolled, grabbed the fallen weapon, and swung it up just as another guard rounded the corner. One shot, he crumpled. The docks became a war zone. Grenades thudded. Containers shook like giants pounding their fists. Smoke bled into the rain. Claire and Max moved like ghosts, tearing through the maze. It fade, vanish, strike again. Every second brought her closer to Kane, and Kane was waiting. She saw him climb a set of steel stairs to a container bridge, his coat flaring behind him like a dark flag. He turned, eyes locking on hers across the chaos, and smiled, a thin, cold smile that promised nothing but blood. "Max," she hissed, pointing. "Him, now." The dog bolted a shadow against the storm. As Claire sprinted after him into the belly of hell, the fight turned primal. Claire and Max were a single weapon, two halves of a savage whole. She cleared angles with deadly precision, muzzle flashes, strobing her rain-slick face. Max with fury incarnate, slipping through smoke and steel, hitting men before they knew what killed them. Kane's army tried to close the net, but they were hunting predators in their own cage. Cut them down. Kane roared from the catwalk, firing his own rifle into the storm. Bullets ripped the air around Claire. She dropped, rolled, came up firing her rounds, punching holes through the men at his side. She was running out of time. SWAT would be inbound if anyone had heard the gunfire, but this needed to end now. She vaulted a stack of pallets, hit the deck behind cover, and reloaded. Max came barreling back toward her, jaws red, eyes wild. He wasn't slowing, not for bullets, not for hell itself. Good boy, she gasped, raking a hand over his soaked fur. A bullet pinged off the steel beside her head. She looked up. Kane was gone, her gut clenched. She scanned the chaos grains looming like dead gods. Containers stacked 10 high, shadows everywhere. Split up, she told Max, signaling with 2 fingers. The dog didn't hesitate. He vanished into the smoke like a phantom. Claire pushed forward, weaving through the skeletal maze until she hit a clearing, and there it was, the container, the one Kane had risked everything to move tonight. It was open, empty. Claire froze. A whisper of boots on steel behind her, and then a voice, smooth and cold, looking for something. Detective. She spun. Kane stood in the container's mouth, rifle hanging loose, grin sharp as a blade. It's over. Claire snarled, gun leveled on him. Call them off. He laughed, a low, vicious sound that curled through the rain. You think you can walk into my world and win? I don't think. Her finger tightened. I know. But she never got the shot off. Kane lunged, slamming the rifle aside. The gun clattered into the dark. His fist cracked across her jaw. Stars burst in her vision as he drove her back into the container, steel walls ringing like a bell. The fight went savage. No rules, no mercy. Claire ducked a wild swing, rammed an elbow into his ribs. He grunted, came back with the knee that knocked the air from her lungs. They hit the floor, grappling, slipping on blood and rain. His hands locked on a throat, squeezing. Should have stayed home. Sweetheart, he hissed, breath hot with rage. Her vision tunneled, black edges creeping in. She clawed for anything, fingers closing on a broken length of chain. With the last of her strength, she swung. The chain smashed into his temple. He reeled, and then a roar, a blur of black fur. Max hit him like a missile, jaws clamping on his arm. Kane screamed, rifle tumbling from his grip. Blood sprayed the steel walls as the dog tore into him. Max, Claire rasped, "Back." The dog hesitated just long enough for Kane to wrench free, grab the fallen gun, and fire. The shot cracked like thunder. Max yelped, went down hard. Something in Claire broke. She dove, caught Kane's wrist before he could fire again, and slammed the barrel into his own face. Bone crunched. He staggered. She drove him into the wall, headbutting him so hard her skull rang. Then she grabbed a chain, looped it around his throat and pulled. Kane thrashed, choking, blood streaming from his shattered nose. Claire's arms burned, teeth clenched, until at last he went still. The storm outside roared. She dropped him, chest heaving, and crawled to Max. The dog lay on his side, fur matted with blood. The bullet had grazed his ribs deep, but not fatal. His eyes found hers, bright even through the pain. His tail thumped once against the steel floor. "Stay with me," Claire whispered, hands shaking as she pressed on the wound. "Don't you dare leave me now." Dawn broke over the Puget's Sound like a promise. The dockyard was crawling with SWAT, and uniforms now, lights flashing red and blue against the rain-washed steel. Paramedics loaded the wounded into ambulances. Officers dragged Kane's men away in cuffs. The container bridge still smoked from the last grenade, and Claire sat on the edge of the pier, legs dangling above the gray water. One arm wrapped around Max. The vet knelt beside them, checking the bandage on his ribs. "He's lucky," the vet said, an inch deeper. "And he didn't finish. He didn't need to." Claire stroked Max's head. "He's more than lucky," she said softly. "He's a damn miracle," the vet smiled. "He'll make a full recovery. Just needs rest." Max licked her hand, tail wagging, weakly. Claire reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out the adoption papers. She'd signed them hours before the fight, maybe because she knew how this night would end. She set the papers on her knee, ink glistening in the dawn light. "It's official," she whispered, pressing her forehead to Max's. "You're mine now, and I'm yours." The wind swept across the water, carrying the scent of salt and smoke. Claire looked out at the horizon, where the first golden rays sliced through the storm clouds. "They didn't just survive the storm," she murmured, voice steady, eyes hard the steel. "They became the storm."